Hello everyone, and welcome to the first ever Kleeful Impressario, a new format that I, Kleeful Frames, am testing out for future first impression videos. The subject of today's show is Ganyu the Great. Ganyu the Great, our resident sweet rain, has a love of flowers, but don't let that fool you. If you get too close, you may find the rain quite frigid, and the flowers bloom deadly. Initial impressions are of the utmost importance for one to not find themselves a wallflower, and fortunately, Ganyu blooms beautifully when center stage. She currently sits across to Luke as his equal, however, do let it be known that this is not her true place to sit. She has so much more potential stored within her, but is currently locked behind needing an incredible amount of control finesse, or in the future, a selection of better pyro allies to provide her the support she needs to shine. Her capability as a supporting cast member also exceeds that of Deluxe, but it is not where her performance shines. Those looking for a hail of cryo status might be disappointed to find that she does not outstrip the other cryo units in their ability to provide cryo in a duel, but she clearly brings the reign, so to speak, in providing an equatable level of cryo to the masses. Ganyu's kit reflects her title of the Plenilune's Gaze. Following the trend of other archers, she brings long-lasting, deployable abilities to combat, with a penchant for assuring the enemy an early, frosty demise. Her skill, Trail of the Qilin, lets her make a quick escape while blooming a mesmerizing ice-white lotus. The initial bloom of the flower is enough to chill any near it, and upon its wilting, it explodes in a cloud of frostbitten chill, dealing cryo damage in an area around the flower. The beauty of the flower is strong enough that it attracts the attention of all but the biggest, baddest bosses. It is currently the strongest aggro-pulling ability of the current cast of characters. Her elemental burst, Celestial Shower, is a unique one. It rains down icy hell, summoning shards of ice to wreak havoc upon those unfortunate enough to be caught within its radius. Though how it works is currently unclear, the prevailing theory of the smartest scientists in Teyvat as to how it works is as follows. Celestial Shower summons one icy shard every 0.3 seconds, and continues to do so for the entire duration of the ability, resulting in a total of 50 shards. When the radius is unpopulated, the shards appear to spawn in a purely random fashion. However, when populated, a most curious behavior surfaces. The shower appears to have some capability at focusing the shards upon enemies located within its borders. It is yet unclear exactly all the rules that govern this targeting behavior, but it has been noted that the vast majority of the randomness amongst the ice shards disappears when the presence of 5 or more enemies dwell within its borders. The exact targeting mechanics still elude us, but we have enough data to conclude that grouping enemies will net large DPS gains. As an archer, Ganyu has mastered the bow. As with following the trend of other archers has set, her auto attack string is flashy, full of pizzazz, but falls a bit flat in its attack speed when compared to the damage it can output. Where Ganyu truly shines, though, is her charged attack. She is capable of charging her arrows farther than any other archer, and this further charge results in an on-contact cryo explosion. The destructive force of this arrow and resulting explosion on a singular entity contains about 91% the destructive force of Tartaglia's own Flash of Havoc, which is his elemental burst while in bow form. This alone is what brings Ganyu up to the upper echelon of Type A pivots, placing her amongst Klee, Diluc, and Keqing as massive DPS characters. Taking a look at the weaponry now, Ganyu has a large selection of bows that can work at her disposal. However, there are a few notable standouts that, based on day 1 math, do supersede the rest of the bunch. On the 5-star side, it has been tested, and Ganyu's Frostflake Bloom impacts at least 0.3 seconds after the initial arrow release. This makes sure that Ganyu's Bloom gets at least 24% of the 40% total buff from Amos's passive, making it extremely good amongst all the 5-star bows. This is the same reason why Slingshot, the 3-star bow, isn't actually amazing on her, despite its initial thoughts at being a ridiculously good cheap option, like Harbinger of Dawn was on Albedo. From the 4-star front, the best option, if you can consistently keep the weak point buff up, is the Prototype Crescent. For those of us too lazy to aim for weak point shots, or who want to have a stronger option when weak points aren't an option, both Black Cliff and Viridescent Hunt are good alternatives, though Black Hunt is the better of the two. For artifact sets, she has the normal options of Noblesse or other generalist sets, but the two that stand out for her are Blizzard Strayer and Wandering Troop. Now would also be a good time to briefly cover her 2 or 3 general playstyles. You have Monocryo, Freeze, and Melt comps to typically play around with. Blizzard Strayer is for the first 2 of those comp builds, while Wandering Troop is for the latter third. For Monocryo and Freeze, you're using the bonuses to crit that come with the Blizzard Strayer set bonus, the Cryo Resonance bonus, and her A2 passive bonus to stack her up to a very large amount of crit chance, making it very easy to also stack a lot of crit damage and come out with a really high overall stat investment. What this does is allow Ganyu to do really big, consistent, in theory, numbers that let her actually keep up with Diluc Vaporize Team's DPS output while lacking a damage reaction. Melt Ganyu needs to be paired with Zhongling, and is all about aiming to melt every charged shot she does, as her charged shot has element burst levels of damage. Reacting with it in a melt comp lets it leap to astronomical levels. Further boosted by both set bonuses of Wandering Troop, she is the first character in the game to fully utilize the set. This comp, in theory, can reach 30, 40, or even 50% more DPS over a Diluc Vaporize team, which is his best in-slot team. However, Zhongling isn't the most amazing pyro applicator, and sticking in melee range as an archer sets you into the danger zone, where you can easily be interrupted or blindsided by enemies, negating any damage you were about to unleash with that charge shot that got interrupted. The skill and positioning ceiling of this comp is so high that it is considered unfeasible to consider the ceiling at this point in time, and so it quickly averages back down to being equatable to Freeze comp levels of DPS, but again is player skill level dependent. And finally, for all of us who are looking to see what value her constellations are, I'm here and I've got you covered. For its Constellation Rater time. Like with Albedo, I'll be covering the constellation strengths of Ganyu and giving any insights as to how they function, but unlike Albedo, I'll be aiming to shotgun these so I can get this video out on time. Constellation 1 is probably her strongest constellation for a Type A pivot roll, giving her innate 15% resistance shred at a 100% uptime, and providing some additional energy generation for her ultimate is really good, and massively enables Monocryo teams and reduces the need to have a Viridescent Veneerer on them. It's a very solid S tier. Constellation 2 is okay. A second charge of her skill is nice for burst energy generation in short scuffles, and helps you maintain 100% uptime on cooldowns, but it doesn't really do anything more than that. It's a nice B+ tier. Constellation 3 boosts her ult talent level and thus damage. This is the better of her abilities to buff, and it comes first, which is really nice. B+ tier. Constellation 4 boosts the damage you do to everything in the ultimate circle. It does this by effectively adding up to plus 25% elemental damage to each of your character stats, and because of this, it's additive, so it winds up effectively becoming closer to a 12% overall damage increase. But, since it's team-wide and can in theory have a 100% uptime, it is a very, very solid buff. A+ tier. Constellation 5 boosts E talent level, nothing special, B tier. Constellation 6 allows her to skip the charge time of her level 2 charge arrows. This is only once after an E-cast though, and considering that is a 10-second cooldown, I can't see it raising her DPS that high as a DPS character, but it is still solid to have and does enable some unique, nuanced swap characteristics with other potential team comps. It is, however, extremely let down by the fact that it is her Constellation 6, making it incredibly expensive to obtain, thus it only sits at a B+ tier. And with that, we can slap Ganyu into the Constellation tier list sheet. Do note the values you see on screen are part of the early beta that I currently have running, thus the values are subject to change. Release date should be sometime next week, maybe make a release video explaining how it all works. And with that, we come to the end of the first ever Kleeful Impressario. Looking back at the editing that I've done, it hasn't quite turned out the way that I originally intended it to, but it's far too late to go back and change it now. As such, I will be looking to further refine the Impressario format as we go on into Genshin Impact's lifespan. For a brief TLDR / what I think about Ganyu beyond what I've just covered, I think she is a very powerful unit, and she is very much worth the pull, but she is not a must-pull. She sits in a point where she is a DPS character and she's very, very good at what she does, but she does require a very specific playstyle using her aimed shots. And aimed shots are not for everyone, especially if you are a mobile or potentially console player, just due to how the camera mechanics currently work. Super TLDR, she is as close to a must-pull unit as can be without being a must-pull unit. Just make sure you actually want her before you pull for her. Again, I'm going to have to thank all of you guys for your continued viewership and support, as it means a lot to me. And as always guys, remember, if you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, make sure you do so you can see future videos, including the crit video, which I have had to restart. I think it's been 5 times now, but that's less important. Also remember that I do have a Twitch and Twitter where I stream and post updates respectively. You can find both of those in the description down below. Once again, I'm Kleeful Frames, and thank you very much for watching.